Hello, I'm Dan Bennett. I'm joined by Ollie Browning, who covers Chelsea for West London Sport, and we're going to run you through 6 things for Chelsea's new owners to focus on. Obviously, we don't know who the owner is going to be yet. There's plenty of reports that have come out this morning about who and who might not have made it to the next stage of the process. Got a little bit of like a X Factor vibe going on at the moment. You know, judges' houses, who's got through and who hasn't. So we're still waiting to see who is in the next stage of the process and who the actual owner might be. But I mean, there's some pretty big things to sort out given everything that's gone on in this past sort of month or two, with the license obviously that's come in for Chelsea and the conditions that they've had to work under. So I'll turn it over to you, Ollie, for the first one. What do you think is a big priority for whoever the new owners when they come in for Chelsea to focus on?
Nice one. I think my first one would be investment in the women's side of the game and the women's team at Chelsea. I think I might start this by saying that I probably won't express my own view about who I want to take over. I think that might become sort of a little bit more clear as we go along. But I think, point number one for me is investment in the women's team, just because you look at what Chelsea have achieved kind of over the past sort of 5-10 years. They have become one of the most successful women's team in Europe, up there with the likes of Wolfsburg, Lyon and Arsenal, back-to-back women's Super League champions and could win it again this year as well. So I think it's really important to keep this side of the operation going. Chelsea are an elite club and they should be fighting and kind of like setting the tone for, anybody's games, men's, women's, youth team as well, which I'll touch on a bit later. And I think for me, as much as like investing in the women's team as well, I think you've got to look at like a word on Emma Hayes personally as well. She has done so much for the football club, both at the women's team and beyond. She was one of the 6 trustees that Abramovich kind of attempted to leave the club to last month. And I just think she's a brilliant ambassador for the football club. So I think keeping her on board is something that the new owners are going to have to do. And I can kind of see it like, she's put sort of like a decade of work into this women's team, making them one of the best in Europe. I think she's going to really be, looking for investment in that team. And otherwise, I think she would rightly kind of like walk away from the club. So, I think point number one, keep Chelsea fighting on all fronts, not just for the club, but, as a kind of general point on, you can go into so much about getting girls and women involved in the sport and how amazing that is, and I think you don't want to lose what Chelsea have at the moment in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's a brilliant ambassador for the club, isn't she? How she's handled this whole situation as well, and the work she's done with the women's team over the past few years has been great. I mean, they won I think it's like 4 leagues, 3 FA Cups, something like that. So it's absolutely. She's got a brilliant record there and she's done some great work. So that hopefully that is something that we will see continue. All right, I'll jump in with my first one. I think we've talked about it previously, Ollie, but I think it's quite an obvious one, is just addressing the defensive situation at the moment that's going on at the club. We've got Chelsea got 3 first team rated defenders out of contract at the end of the season in Antonio Rudiger, Andreas Christensen and Cesar Azpilicueta. Obviously, they can't offer them contracts at the moment, given the conditions the club's under. But they will hopefully be able to do that when a new owner comes in. And I just think it would be, it's not an ideal situation at all to come in and potentially facing the prospect of rebuilding a big part of the defence. Azpilicueta and Rudiger have been, mainstays in that defence over the past couple of years. So I think that's a big priority that they're going to have to focus on. And I'm not sure it's realistic to keep all of them at the club, but I think if you could tie one of them down to a longer deal, I think we'd probably say Rudiger would be the best one to try and keep at the club. I think if you could keep him, it would just provide a bit more consistency and you wouldn't have such a big rebuild job going on in the defence, which no new owner wants to come in and have to kind of rebuild a big part of the team, do they? So I think that is a massive thing they're going to have to fix. And I think it'd be one of the main priorities when they come in, is looking at those contract situations with the defenders and seeing if there's something they could potentially do there, rather than taking a risk on buying it and spending a lot of money on a new defender that we know what Rudiger can do. So I think keeping him at the club would be massive. So I'll turn it back over to you.
I just think we've seen a lot over the past kind of few weeks of certain potential owners. I think almost playing the PR game a little bit and coming out and saying, if we get the club, we will do everything we can to keep those players that are going out of contract, especially Rudiger. And I think I've seen reports that Rudiger is not ready to make a decision, or someone has come out and said that Rudiger is not ready to make a decision on his future until, kind of the season comes to an end, after he play Real Madrid in the Champions League, because I know they're one of the clubs that he's been linked with. I think, priority in terms of the transfer market is almost, for most fans, maybe just trying to keep the squad we have without it being ripped apart this summer. And Rudiger, Azpilicueta and Christensen, if you could keep two of the three of those, namely maybe Rudiger and Christensen, I think you'd be so happy. Like Azpilicueta, I mean, we said this so many times, has been an incredible player for the club. But is he realistically going to get in the team when the wing backs are fit? Probably not. Like, I'm sure he'd be incredible in the dressing room to keep around, but if he wants to go, like, he's gonna be able to leave. So I've just got my fingers crossed that everything kind of completes in time for the new owners to get something on the table before the summer.
That's the big thing, isn't it? If it carries on until then, and we're really not talking about that long, they might not have that option anyway. So
absolutely,
it's got to get wrapped up before then. So
this is it, isn't it? We're just hoping, fingers are crossed. But I think a few of the potential owners have come out and said they want to keep him, which is great to hear. But you just never know until it happens. But so fingers crossed we can have Rudiger next season, we can have Christensen next season, and a bonus would be Azpilicueta. But I'm not holding my breath. I think not too many people would be confident of keeping all three. I guess that kind of brings me on to my second point, which would be the Chelsea transfer policy and ensuring that the club kind of stays and operates the way that Roman Abramovich kind of has run it for the last sort of 19 years. So I think the biggest promise Chelsea fans will probably want is continuing in that similar vein. Like, I think it sounds like we are spoiled to say that if there's a player we've wanted in the last 2 decades, we can go out and buy them. We can break those transfer records sort of like left, right and centre. And I think like the transfer policy itself has just breeded the success of the last sort of couple of decades. Abramovich's policy and his spending has been the main driver. Like, there's no doubt that, like, behind trophies, if you want to compete for the biggest trophies in the world, you need the best players in the world. You need the strongest squad in the world. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. Like 21 trophies in 19 years, like that is unmatched in world football. And there's a reason amongst many that everybody hates Chelsea, and it's because they have been so successful. And I think everybody knows that. But football is like, it's all about winning trophies, isn't it? And I worry that if we get an owner, I'm not going to name them, maybe like an owner that owns another team, an American team, for example, a baseball team, you just worry that, I personally worry that Chelsea would not be the primary investment there. And money is going to have to be split between multiple places, and we couldn't go out and buy the players we need to compete with, and we'd end up just being another Premier League club and a fan base that hates their owners. And I've seen a lot already over the limited kind of Chelsea fans that I follow, the kind of big Twitter accounts that I follow that are completely against certain owners because that's what they can see happening.
I think we can say, the Ricketts family, they have just straight. The backlash is there's been a big backlash against those, especially, hasn't there? And obviously a lot of that as well stems from some emails that resurfaced again, who from, I think, Joe Ricketts, who's not actually, have said he's involved in the bid, but obviously he's part of the family, and racist and sort of Islamophobic emails that have come out, which see a lot of fans have not taken, have opposed, and rightly so. So obviously the backlash has been big there, but fine, I'll let you carry on.
No, I think you summed it up. Like there are multiple reasons we probably wouldn't want the Ricketts family, but those being two of them. I think just to wrap up on the transfer policy point, you need investment, and this club is built on going out and buying the best players and going out and getting the players to compete. And I feel if even for a year or so, if that investment isn't there, I think the club just slips down a level, and I wonder whether it'll be the same as it was. I don't know.
Do you think it's realistic to expect like the same level of investment in transfers and transfer activity as to what it's been in the last few years? Do you think, or last more than a few years, 15 years, whatever it is, but do you think fans can realistically expect that, or do you think there will be some drop off in
I think there's definitely going to be some level of drop off. What we wouldn't want is a kind of drop off, I think, where you lose your 3 defenders and you don't buy any more. You don't buy at least one genuine good replacement, whether I don't know, whether you look through the academy or you look through the loan army. But yeah, I think that would be a genuine worry if we could, if we were to lose your Rudigers, your Christensens and your Aspilicuetas and then not replace them, because I think a lot of Chelsea's success so far this season is built on not conceding goals, or it was, certainly for the first half of the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, look, I don't think we're going to go out and smash a 150 million bid for Haaland next summer, like as much as you'd love that. But yeah, I'm worried, I think, over transfers, and like I said, I think it makes Chelsea fans spoiled to say that we go out and we have had whoever we wanted over the last 20 years. So I think it will take a bit of getting used to. But yeah, I think there'll be a drop off, but one that hopefully will be managed properly.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I pretty much agree with you. I don't think it'll be quite the level of same transfer investment that it's been for the last 15 years, but absolutely the new owner, you have to spend to compete nowadays. That's just the reality of the situation. So it's not really an option not to do that. Well, I'll come on to my second point, which is Stamford Bridge, and specifically, announcing a plan for Stamford Bridge and the kind of way forward with it. I mean, it's been a talking point for years and years now. Obviously there was the Battersea power station plan where they were going to move, and that never came to fruition. I love going to Stamford Bridge, and I'm sure you do too. It's a great stadium, it's great atmosphere, but we all know the problems with it. It's such a tight site. When you walk around it, you got the wall there and the stadium there. You can't build out on it. There's just nothing you can really do with it. So I think that is a big priority that they're going to have to look at, and I'm sure a lot of fans will feel that they don't want to move away from Stamford Bridge and would be quite happy to stay, which is completely understandable. But I think, you look at what Arsenal have done, and, West Ham even, and Liverpool are expanding Anfield, and all these clubs, and, Spurs obviously being the obvious one with, Chelsea's rivals with the massive new stadium, and how much positive comments that's attracted, and how great a stadium that is. And even though Stamford Bridge is a great ground and it's got all the sentimental value there, I think, football is a ruthless game, and it's so competitive, and I think Chelsea will look at that and think, well, we need to get to where they are, and the stadium's a big part of that. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything like major to come about straight away. Obviously it's a very complex issue, and there's a lot of things that would have to be sorted through, I think, before they could announce something. But hopefully whoever the new owner is, quite early on in their ownership, they could kind of announce a plan for what the stadium situation is, and whether it's on the Stamford Bridge site, or whether they want to move the club away. I think that is quite important, just to give that kind of clarity to the supporters.
Yeah, I genuinely love stadium talk. I think kind of, it was sort of five or so years ago, there was, genuine expectation that Abramovich was going to, rebuild the stadium on the same site. And obviously there was so many issues with it beyond planning permission and stuff like that. But the plans looked really exciting. And I think recently, I can't remember, someone came out and said, possibly someone linked to one of the potential new owners kind of came out and said, if you want to build a new stadium at Stamford Bridge, we're going to have to build down into the ground to make it even.
Because it already goes up high, doesn't it? It's a lot higher than a stadium of that size you think would be, but that's for obvious reasons to get
this is it,
because it's not, wide, I guess.
Absolutely.
No expert. I'm just,
No, me neither. I don't know how to build a stadium, and I wouldn't want to pretend that I know how to build a stadium, but that's what I think I very briefly saw. But I love Stamford Bridge the way it is. I think it kind of almost used to be seen as like a stadium, not a great stadium, but I think the way every kind of new stadium that's been built has kind of lost the tightness that a stadium like Stamford Bridge has. I think fans, and especially now away fans, enjoy coming to Stamford Bridge because they're so close to the pitch.
Yeah.
So I will be, I'd be quite disappointed if Chelsea were to knock Stamford Bridge down and create, like another kind of big bowl stadium. But like you say, that's what football is. Like, you look at all these stadiums across Europe, like the San Siro, the Bernabeu, the Nou Camp, they all seem to be changing everything about what made them special and unique stadiums, and building similar kind of structures. So I think that's the way football is going. Whether it's possible to do it at Stamford Bridge on the current site, I think you're right. I don't think it is. So I think it would be like a relocation kind of thing. How far out of kind of Fulham, Chelsea, I don't know. It would certainly be interesting to see, but I would, I'm sitting on the fence a bit, but I would like to see Chelsea build a new stadium in the next kind of 10, 15 years. I think the club is big enough to be selling out a kind of 60,000 seater stadium every weekend. I think there would be no question about that. I think we'd get the support there. But whether it can be done in, where it is at the moment is another thing. But yeah, it's exciting. And I'm glad that a number of prospective owners have kind of said, this is what we want to do. Of course, we want to build a new stadium. I think it makes sense from a business point of view anyway.
Yeah. So I think the new ownerships will kind of reignite that point, won't it? It's been kind of pushed to the back a little bit, with Abramovich obviously abandoning plans for a new stadium. But obviously with the situation now and the new owners coming in, it's going to definitely reignite that, and hopefully we'll see some development and some news on that, at some point in the near future, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we'd love to see it. Absolutely. And I guess I'm going to link terribly into development of a structure, into development of an academy as my third and final point, an investment in the club's academy. And I think to say, I think what Chelsea fans were really desperate for after all the early success that Abramovich brought and all the trophies that came early on, was a world-class academy to kind of flesh through the next generation of footballers and kind of bring in what Man United have, what Ajax have, what Barcelona have. And I think genuinely that is what Abramovich has done over the last sort of couple of decades. And, you look at all the players that we had, I kind of want to call it like a once in a generational boom of young English talent coming through the academy. So you had your Reece James, Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, even as far as say Declan Rice, all of these players kind of that played together at the Chelsea academy. They all walk into any team in the Premier League. They're all guaranteed starters in most teams in Europe. And, that is an incredibly exciting thing to see, these boys from Cobham coming through and turning into world beaters. And I think we want that to continue. You look at the players that are coming through the academy now, one that I'm a massive fan of is Harvey Vale, who's been getting some minutes with the first team this season. And, you've got undoubtedly so many more coming through, and whether even in the last kind of month or so, whether the academy has been able to kind of operate the way it has been with all this kind of, all the questions around the club, it would just be a massive shame to kind of see that disappear. And I think regardless of who the new owners are, I don't see it being a problem either. I think, why would you not want investment in the next generation of footballers that could save you millions and millions of pounds in buying players and just kind of creating stars the way we have been doing for the last sort of 10, 15 years? I just think it's a no-brainer, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's no doubting that Cobham is right up there with the world's best academies in terms of bringing through players. And I think Chelsea have come in for a lot of criticism in the past when they've had 30, 40 players out on loan, and it's these guys are never going to get in the team, but I think that's changed recently. Obviously, Frank Lampard's reign as manager didn't end well, but one of the big successes was that he brought Reece James and Mason Mount through, to the forefront of the first team. And I think that's showing that, Chelsea can bring players through the academy and get them into the first team. They don't have to go out and spend big money. And if the transfer budget is going to be less, like we spoke about a minute ago, that is a big way, continued investment in the youth team and bringing, just carrying on the work essentially that's been done over the last 15, 20 years, however long it's been, is a big way, I think, to continue the success as well. And obviously you've got Conor Gallagher out on loan, who's doing really well now. And, hopefully we might get to see these young lads keep getting a role in the first team and continue to impress, because it's definitely I think a path Chelsea can follow towards success, as it's shown in the last couple of years, with obviously winning the Champions League. A lot of the guys in that team were come through the academy, so it's definitely a big thing, I think, and I agree with you completely on that. I'll come on to my last point now, and it's kind of like a general one. It's just essentially just get the fans on side and involved, I think. I think over the last few years, it's shown that football fans are often ignored or, underappreciated and underestimated as well. I think, we saw with the Super League and how that was attempted to be like rushed through, and no one really thought the fans would kick up the fuss they did. And, there was just universal protest about it. And it, because of that, managed to get stopped. And then we had owners issuing like groveling apologies on social media and stuff. And I think it's just showing that fans need to be, especially with all the money in the game now, need to be considered in the decision-making process at football clubs. We've heard some of the prospective owners come out and say that, they'd like to include sort of fan representation on the board, but whether it's that or whether it's just, direct communication to the club, I think that's going to be so important, that the fans are on side straight away, and that they don't feel like they're ignored, and that they're consulted on the big issues that the club are facing under the new owner. I think they've got to get that right straight away when they come in, because, if you don't, and you don't get the fans on side, and you get a bit of backlash from the supporters, given how, the ownership has done over the last, and all the success over the last 15 and 20 years, I really think that is something that they could potentially really regret if they don't do that. So yeah, I just think getting fans represented, getting fans' views, I think is going to be very important for whoever the new owner is.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed it. Like, you don't want an owner to come in that doesn't get football and doesn't get fans. And I think that the Chelsea pitch owners, their association, have been obviously very, very vocal on kind of social media in the past few weeks, kind of, hoping to meet with prospective buyers. And I think a number of them have, which is, brilliant. And I think if you can, get the pitch owners and that kind of side of things on board, I think, you're onto a winner. And yeah, like you said on the kind of Super League stuff, I think it was Chelsea, that Chelsea were playing, weren't they, a day, or maybe even the day of the announcement, a day after, whatever. And the amount of people at Stamford Bridge in the middle of a lockdown, just protesting and going absolutely crazy and almost having the game called off. Yeah. I think, like, obviously that forced a massive quick U-turn on that. I think if you had owners who are not, giving the fans a voice and not representing the fans, you're going to have that tenfold around Stamford Bridge every week, which would be terrible for them, for the new owners. So I think it makes sense to have, dialogue with fans, representation from fans, or at least, to be in contact with fans, forums and stuff, like the pitch owners, and giving them a say and taking their views, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let us know what you think the new owners have to concentrate on in the comments below. We're keen to hear your thoughts, and leave a like to the video as well, and please subscribe if you've not done already and you enjoyed this content. And yeah, thanks for watching.